I don't know about you, but I'm terribly impatient. I want things to happen right now. What about God being patient with us? Let's think about that. Hi, I'm Father Mike Manning. God bless you. I want to talk to you today about the presence of God in our life. I've been speaking and thinking a lot about the reality of Jesus and his deep, deep love for his Father. He loved his Father, and it just permeates all of his being, all of his speaking, and all of his life. And one of the things that he did consistently was, and even Matthew and Mark say that he only did this, was he told stories, he told parables. And in the stories, he was trying to get across many, many important points, but one of them was, he wanted to tell us who his Father was. Isn't that amazing to believe of Jesus, that great lover, that passionate lover of the poor, of the sick, of hurting, of that Jesus loving his Father with every fiber of his being. Let's think about that, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about a parable. It's from Matthew 13, and it's the story of a farmer who goes out and he plants his crop. Well, something happens that all of a sudden, maybe it's an enemy comes in and plants weeds in the midst of the crop. Well, the man who's in charge of the farm comes up and says, well, look what happened here. Somebody, I guess maybe an enemy has come in and they've planted weeds in the midst of the good things. Should we cut everything down? And the owner says, no. Let's wait a year and wait until the good crop comes up, and then we'll see where the weeds are, and then we can distinguish between the two. Interesting little story. But if you take this angle of Jesus wanting to tell us who his Father is, I'm really struck by the importance of Jesus saying, look, my Father is patient with us. God is like the farmer. God is, what does a farmer do? Well, he cultivates the ground. They've got to plow it. They've got to plant, they've got to water, they've got to weed. Oh, and of course, they've got to put manure and they've got to trim some things that grow. Isn't that interesting? Of looking at God, looking at us as we struggle to know what we're supposed to do in our life and what's good, and sometimes we seem so far away from it. But God is patient. Oh, you can see that patience of God when you look at a tree. Here in California, there's a place up in the Sierras that I was able to go where they have these gigantic redwood trees. They're so gigantic that they're able at the base of them to hollow out an area where a car can drive through the base of the tree. And they'll come and they'll show that when they cut some of the trees, they see the rings on the trees, and these trees have been around for centuries, in order to grow to this magnificent, beautiful tree. Oh, and every morning I look out on the San Bernardino Mountains, and when they're clear, the sun can be on them, and even the snow can be on the top in the winter. And that took a long time. That took a long time from maybe just a ground, and then it grew to these craggy, beautiful mountains. And I look at that and I think, whoa, the God we believe in is a God of patience who allows us to grow and allows us to move in new and fresh ways. Oh, and this word about the stars, getting into a spaceship and going up to the satellite area up there, or getting a view from from a camera in those places that are allowing us to see into the space that we'd never seen before, never seen before. And now we get these pictures coming back with all these magnificent, diverse things, so much richer than you look out in the night and you say, oh, look at those stars, and they're all beautiful and they're all romantic. But now, with the camera, it's going deeper and deeper and deeper. Isn't that amazing? Well, when I think of patience, I think of my own struggle with my own self, being patient with myself. Well, I have to admit that I grow, and we all grow, don't we? We all grow from little babies, we grow to teenagers, and then we grow to adults, and then we get older. But isn't it fascinating that the God who's created us has put us into this context of a patient, growing reality? We move physically. And God is patient with us. He knows us. He knows us as children. He knows us as teenagers with our hormones going crazy. He knows us as we try to suddenly come to a sense of responsibility with children and family. He knows us, and he's patient with us because of that knowledge. Well, not only do we grow physically, but we grow morally, don't we? We're all trying to know what's right and what's wrong, and we look to people who give us direction. Maybe it's from the church, maybe it's from our parents, maybe it's from the friends on the street that tell us, ooh, you should do that, or no, you shouldn't do that. And inside we start to discern. We start to discern what's right and what's wrong. And sometimes, oh gosh, sometimes we go down the wrong road. Sometimes we're going down the wrong road. We're thinking everything is right, and then all of a sudden a moment of grace comes and says, you're being a fool, you better change. And so we move in another direction. But in all this process, whether it's the physical growth or whether it's our moral growth, isn't it neat to think of God, this God who's created so many things, and in the story, waiting on us, waiting on us. One of the greatest growth that we can have, though, in a personal level, is the growth that we have as a person in relationship with God. Think about the people who influenced you, maybe as just a little child, and then you're growing and you're struggling with how do you reconcile violence and crime with a God of love. And all of these things kind of grow. And then there's experiences that we have in church when maybe it's we're receiving our first communion, maybe it's the sacrament of matrimony, maybe it's the sacrament of ordination, and something happens and whoa, we have a wonderful growth. But the growth happens meaning that we move from here to there. And that's what we're all about. We're all about a God of patiently moving with us, helping us. I think one of the things that we also need to face is the importance of being patient with others. As a priest, I share in the sacrament of reconciliation, and I have people coming in and sharing their sins. And I've got to tell you that one of the sins, without breaking the seal, that I hear most often, especially from married people, is the struggle with patience. The patience with my spouse, the patience with children. We know where we want them to go, and we have a plan, and yet inevitably they seem to be going in the other direction. And boy, our patience gets pulled, oh man, it really pulls us down. And yet we want that patience. And to imagine, even in our own frustration with patience, our frustrations with people around us, that God isn't that frustrated. Maybe he's a little discouraged, but he's continually calling us with patience to the dream that he has for us. And he does it in a beautiful way. I reflect in my own life that right here with my own television ministry, I've wanted to have someone come on and maybe become a co-host and take over the television ministry and move what we've been doing for so many years. And I can remember someone coming in and, oh gosh, she was just ideal for, in my mind, she was just the person that was going to be able to change everything and turn it all around and become this great host. Well, she had everything beauty, she had articulate, she touched people deeply with her messages. But she didn't have the full call of what it means. And what I found in my frustration, in my lack of patience was, the need to stop and to be patient with people and allow them to move in the road that God has called them to. With this lady, instead of being a television star, she's become a wonderful mother and wife. And to acknowledge that. Well, I want to talk with you a little bit more about this patience, and I hope you're going to hang in with me. We're going to be coming back in just a moment, and I want to talk a little bit about this patience with perhaps patience with God. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching the program. Thank you also for sending in your donations to allow us to continue. It's so very vital. I'd like to come back to you after you've sent your donation by giving you a gift. It's a gift that is written by a friend of mine, Father Marty Padovani, a member of my community, Divine Word Missionaries. The title of the book is Healing Wounded Emotions. Father Marty is a counselor, and he's going to come to you as you read this book with deep insights into some of the topics that are really at the heart of the pain and struggle that you're going with. Pain and struggle with emotions. There are some topics here that I know you'll relate to. Take, for example, anger. How do we deal with anger? Anger with other people, anger with ourselves, even anger with God. Father Marty is going to open some doors and bring you the peace that you're looking for. What about forgiveness? Forgiveness of someone that's hurt us, or even forgiveness of ourselves. Then there's the other overriding problem of emotion that we experience time and time again in our world today. And that's the problem of depression. How many people have I run into that are just overwhelmed with this shadow of depression in their life, and they don't know how to get out? Father Marty, with the wisdom and prayer that he gives, is going to help you in a rich way. So, as you reach out and try to help our ministry and allow us to continue, please ask for a copy of this book, Healing Wounded Emotions by Father Marty Padovani. And together, may we bring about the peace and the power of Christ. We're talking about God, and we're talking about God being patient, something that perhaps we don't think about. Sometimes we have this image of God standing over us as a judge and watching everything we're doing and wanting us to change immediately. And yet, when you look at creation, you look at who we are, and you look at the struggles we have with our own relationships with others, we can understand that we need to see God as patient. Wouldn't it be marvelous if we could relax with that? Relax with a God who loves us so much that he's going to understand the ins and outs and the ups and downs of so much of what we go on through life. One of the aspects, though, of God's love and God's patience is, and it comes through the parable, is that at the end of the parable, there's this decision between the good weeds and the bad weeds. The owner of the farm comes in and says, let's gather it all up. Let's have this time of reaping. And along with this importance of patience, you and I both know that there does come a time when we have to stop and we have to say, I just can't keep saying everything is fine. I maybe need to stop and confront you. I might even have to be angry with you because you're hurting yourself and you're hurting other people. You know, maybe you should start to change your life. It's really important that we understand, in this context of understanding patience and God being patient, that we also understand we are accountable for what we do, and we can't cheat God. We can't pretend that God is not demanding of us. And as we rest with patience, and I know that I might be sounding contradictory to you as I say this, but we rest with patience, but we move on. We move on with an urgency to a desire to change and reach the dream that deep in our heart we know God is giving us and we're trying to discern. Well, it brings us to another aspect of patience. I've spoken of patience with ourselves, patience with other people. But what about patience with God? It sounds a little strange, doesn't it? But sometimes I think even if you think about our prayers, we pray and maybe we don't get the answer that we want and we blame God. I think one of the things about blaming God that we need to think about is that a lot of the evil that we experience in the world is not necessarily something that God wants. You and I both know that we've been given freedom by God. God has said, Michael, I love you so much. I want you to go out and I want you to make choices. You can choose good, you can choose bad. You can choose me or you can reject me. And isn't that amazing? That God is so loving that he comes to and he says exactly that. Well, it's really important to know that sometimes when we blame God for things that are happening, we should be blaming ourselves because of our abuse of the freedom that he's given to us. Well, I'm thinking of things like war. I'm thinking of things of like the abuse of innocent children. I'm thinking of great acts of selfishness that people do that influence a whole nation that doesn't have enough food, or a whole continent that doesn't have enough food because of individual decisions that are made, maybe because of greed, and everything falls apart. Sometimes I think we blame God, and we should really reevaluate that and start thinking more and more of our own personal responsibility of using the freedom that God has given us for choosing the loving, the caring, and the good things in life, to stop blaming. Oh gosh, blaming is great because, well, then I don't have any responsibility. But we have to acknowledge the fact that God longs to push us continually with inspirations, with prophets, with beautiful gifts from the arts to understand what we're supposed to do. We need to wake up and accept that. And I've spoken to you before, if you've been listening to my sharing with you about these 15 faces of God being perhaps a little bit like a jazz musician. That when things go wrong in the world and when we abuse our freedom, all of a sudden the dream that God has for us starts to take a sour note and it starts going south. I believe that God is like that jazz musician who, when you're playing in a jazz experience, you take a simple tune like the A Train, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba, bum, like that, and they'll start going off with the guitars, with the drums, with the bass, with the trumpet, with the saxophone and whatnot, and the piano, and they'll start playing their own thing. But then somebody makes a mistake. Somebody hits a bad note. Well, you know what's crazy in a jazz experience? Everybody gets a big smile on their face because that bad note all of a sudden opens up a brand new way of playing a song in a way that's never been heard before, filled with creativity and wonder. And that's who our God is. A God who dreams for us, who urges us with great patience to be the great people we are. And yet when we do something wrong, it's marvelous that God can take that melody of our life and God can break out with a brand new creation, a plan that nobody ever heard of before. And life is filled with wonder and greatness. Please, let God be that wonderful, wonderful, patient God in your life. Maybe you're kind of churning as I'm speaking with you this, that your marriage or a dream that you have or your health, and it seems to all be going kind of sour and you're struggling with that. Would you allow yourself now to rest with a God that loves you and is patient with you and will never let you go? A God who's instilled a dream in you. What's going on in your heart right now? What are some of the dreams that God has put in your heart? Are you willing to allow that to move out? And once you realize God is patient and not boom, 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 boom hitting you, maybe with that relaxation, you're going to be able to kind of rest with a little bit more. I want to talk to you a little bit about a special friend that I have. And this is this relaxing with a God of patience. And it's the story of a man by the name of Charles Péguy. Charles Péguy was a Frenchman. He lived in the early, he died in the First World War back in France. But Charles Péguy was plagued by an image of God that was very frightful. He was filled with guilt. He was filled with fear. God was just a terrible, terrible person. And to compensate for that, what he did was he started writing poems in which God was like an old grandfather sitting on a porch in a rocking chair with a long beard, talking with great love to his grandchildren. And one of the plagues that Péguy had was that he couldn't sleep. This anguish with his life and with God was just so great. And so he created this little short story, and see if I can read this for you. A beautiful, beautiful poem called Sleep by Charles Péguy. And hear this as this relaxation with a God who is patient with us. Péguy says, remember, this is God speaking, like a grandfather. I don't like the man who doesn't sleep, says God. Sleep is a friend of mine. Sleep is a friend of God. Sleep is perhaps the most beautiful thing I have ever made. And I myself rested on the seventh day. Boom. Please. God is patient with you. God loves you. Rest with God. Sleep with God. Sleep in the arms of a God who will never let you go from his tender embrace. It's very important that you share in this ministry by offering your prayers and also by offering your donations to allow us to continue. We need your help. And as a sign of my support of you for your support, I'd like to send you a copy of this book by a friend of mine, Father Marty Padovani, a Divine Word missionary. The title of the book is Healing Wounded Emotions. This book is going to touch such topics as how do you deal with anger? How do you deal with forgiving others? How do you deal with forgiving self? And oh my, one of the big important topics, how do we deal with depression in our life? Father Marty is going to give you a perspective of a Christian who has been able to touch the heart of a solution and true healing. Remember, ask for the book, Healing Wounded Emotions. Thanks very much for watching the show. Thanks for being patient with me. Would you pray with me for your own intentions, as well as for the beautiful people that have written in to us? It's really great that you go to our webpage and that you give us a phone call, that you purchase the various things that we're offering, and that also that you remember us in your will. And also, that really would be important if as you're making out your will, think about including us in that, would you? And it's going to allow the gifts that God gave you to go many, many years beyond that. But also, would you remember to tune into the iPhone. I have a daily message on the iPhone. Those of you who have a smartphone, both the Android and the iPhone, and even with BlackBerry, do that. Lord, I pray very, very much for all of the people here that are watching us. Would you bless them very much? Bless all their physical problems, their emotional problems, but I also pray for their spiritual problems. Would you bring them the blessings that you want? Bless Letty as she struggles with immigration problems. Revenge with physical healing. And from Pennsylvania, a physical healing for Susan. And Anne from Texas wants to pray for her sister a healing from cancer. Thank you, Lord, for hearing us, and God bless you, and may Jesus' love for you always make you smile.
Wish as I may, wish as I might, I'm all out of reasons to hide. I thought I could run, I thought I could fight, but this time I know what you're saying. If you love me, feed my sheep, pick up your cross and come follow me. If you love me, feed my sheep. Do you love me? Really love me? Feed my sheep.
I knew you could tell, I knew you could see the wall I was building inside. Sturdy and strong till you came along and whispered right through my defenses. If you love me, feed my sheep, pick up your cross and come follow me. If you love me, feed my sheep. Do you love me? Do you really love me? Feed my sheep.
Where to from here? It's never too clear. I'm going wherever you lead me.
I'll give you my life, I'll give you my dreams. How else can I show you I love you?
There must be some way I can tell you.
Lord, you must know that I love you. If you love me, feed my sheep. Pick up your cross and come follow me.